I'm Bill Cassler. Joining me today, U.S. Congressman Bill Johnson from Ohio's 6th District. Bill, hey, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule in Washington. I know there's a lot going on right there, and joining us here today in the district. So good to see you as usual. Lots of things going on right now in D.C. I mean, it's a real busy time, isn't it?
It is a busy time, Bill, and it's good to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, lots of issues right now. The federal government is really right now at the forefront of just about everything worldwide. Incidentally, it's the talk that's on everybody's lips right now. And of course, the one thing that we all want to know about what's going on in D.C. is the border wall, and it's a big issue. People are very divided on it right now. Are you in support of the border wall that's caused the government shutdown?
Well, the border wall didn't cause the government shutdown. Let's be clear on that. The president did not shut down the federal government. A brief explanation. The way funding works, to fund the federal government, the House has to pass a funding bill, the Senate has to pass the funding bill, and it has to go to the president's desk. I wonder how many Americans know that there has not been a funding bill that includes border security sent to the president. So there hasn't been a solution provided by the legislature. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have blocked that effort. We passed a bill last month that would have funded the border security. And by the way, it's not just a wall. Call it a wall, call it a fence, call it a barrier. There's more than just a physical barrier involved. There's technology, there's humanitarian aid for the families and the unaccompanied minors that are coming there. There's money for more legal support for those that do have asylum cases. There's a lot of stuff in that $5.7 billion. But that bill was passed out of the Republican-led House last December, and Chuck Schumer blocked it in the Senate. So the president never had a chance to sign it.
Well, but isn't the border wall really the issue? Because the president has basically said that if we don't have a bill that supports border security, he's not going to sign it.
Well, and I believe the president is right about that. I think the crisis on the southern border is not fabricated. It is not manufactured on either side of the political aisle. This should not be a partisan issue. It is an American issue. The facts are the facts, and they're undeniable. We have 300 Americans dying every week from heroin overdoses, some of those right here in Ohio. In calendar year 17 and 18, we saw a 73% increase in fentanyl coming across our southern border. Fentanyl, an amount the size of a small restaurant salt shaker can kill 10,000 people.
It's an elephant tranquilizer.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. It's a very, very dangerous drug. Yes.
It can kill 10,000 people. And so we've got a criminal element, drugs coming across that southern border. We've got to secure our border.
Well, hey, that leads us into the next question as well. It's kind of interesting. A lot of controversy right now over the fact that basically the president and you know, Congress, and the Senate and the House have both basically shut down the government. There's a lot of controversy now. Should that be able to happen? Should there be a bill that's would you support a bill that would basically be opposed to government shutdowns?
Look, I am opposed to government shutdown, but I think the way that process should work is outlined in our Constitution. I don't want to override our Constitution by passing legislation that lets Congress off the hook. That's exactly why we're in the mess that we're in right now, Bill, is because, I mean, what motivation would members of the House and members of the Senate have to pass a funding bill if they knew that it didn't matter, that the government would just keep on running on automatic? I don't think that that's smart. I think the Constitution spelled it out, and I think passing budgets and appropriations, that's the right thing to do. And that's the way I think it ought to be handled.
Boy, I'll tell you what, you handled that pretty well. So those are the biggest issues right now nationally. But what do you think are the issues now that are facing our district, that are on the table right now? What's important here? What's going to impact the people that you represent?
Well, I can tell you, and sort of, springboarding off of the subjects that we just talked about, everywhere I go in eastern and southeastern Ohio, Bill, I get this. Support the president, secure our border, then let's open up the government. We don't have a lot of federal employees in our district, but they have been impacted. You've got FEMA grants that are not flowing, so you got fire departments that have had to lay off people that had been awarded FEMA grants. That money will begin to flow this week, and so I'm hopeful that problem will be abated. You've got community health centers that are waiting on USDA grants. And that money hasn't flowed. So we have had some implications. You've got businesses that need to be able to talk to the IRS. The president said that IRS refund checks would flow, but the telephones aren't being answered. So you got businesses that have tax questions under the new tax law, and they need those questions answered, and they haven't been able to get those. So I'm hearing secure the border, open up the government, but support the president. But infrastructure, broadband internet access, roads and bridges, the opioid addiction, energy development, streamlining the pipeline approving and permitting process so that we can get the infrastructure to get this vast resource that we have here in our region that's creating so many jobs and creating the economic boom here in eastern and southeastern Ohio. Those are the things that I'm working on.
Well, everybody's real interested in the oil and gas boom. Of course, a lot of people in favor of that right now. Coal's another resource that we have here, been a resource here for years. How is our coal resource viewed in Washington, D.C.? I know it's not real favorable. And is there anything that can really be done to increase the use of coal across the nation?
Well, we've done some of that already. The Obama era war on coal was very, very real. Regulations coming out of the Obama administration attacked coal on the production side, attempted to make it almost illegal to do underground coal mining in America. On the utilization side, taxing carbon emissions, which essentially, and President Obama said himself, it's going to be economically infeasible to build a new coal-fired power plant in America. He stood by that, and he did that. And we've had hundreds of coal-fired power plants shut down. But the war on coal in Washington is over. The Trump administration, thanks in part to some legislation that I authored and others, we've ended that war on coal. And coal companies today, we're seeing records amount of coal being exported. It's going to take a while for coal to come back on the power generation side, but we're making advances in carbon capture and sequestration, capturing those carbon emissions. Look, I tell people this all the time. Nobody cares more about the air that we breathe and the water that we drink than those of us that live in coal country. We understand, and I can tell you we're concerned about that too. We can solve this problem if we get Washington, D.C. and the unelected bureaucrats there that think they know better than the engineers and the scientists out in America. We can solve these problems.
Let's jump back to a question now that's got some international impact. We're withdrawing troops from a lot of countries right now, a lot of different countries. Do you believe that the U.S. should continue to withdraw those troops from foreign soil? And do you think that the United States is still the world's police force?
Bill, I served 26 years, almost 27 in the United States Air Force, all of that time on active duty. I believe America is the guardian of the gate of freedom for the world. I believe every president from Washington to Donald Trump believe that as well. Are we the police force for the world? No. But when it comes to supporting our friends and our allies and protecting Americans wherever they are abroad, we have a heavy responsibility. And I can tell you the war on terror is very real. We've seen what happens when we take our eye off the ball. September 11th, 2001, they came here. They killed thousands of Americans in the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. They have tried to do it other times as well, and we've caught them before they were able to do it. Overseas, we've seen the terror networks grow. The war on terror is very, very real. I believe that we should fight those battles in their backyard, not here in the streets of Cambridge and Columbus and Washington County down in Marietta where I live. I don't want those battles there. So we're going to always have that overseas presence, because carrying the banner of freedom for the world is a heavy responsibility.
Well, one more question.
Yeah.
Government right now really, really polarized. In other words, Republicans and Democrats, they don't see eye to eye. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen it worse. What can be done to bring those sides together, to moderate a little bit? I know it's a tough question and it's a broad question, but it's something that a lot of people talk about.
You know, it's not actually a tough question, because the answer is very, very simple. If we would stop identifying by our party first and remember that we are Americans first, you'd see a lot of this problem go away. I hate to wax historical with you here, but going back to the Ronald Reagan administration, Ronald Reagan, a Republican president, Tip O'Neill, a Democrat Speaker of the House, they would let the world swirl around them during the day. The national media made it look like they hated one another. Many people don't know that at the end of the workday, Tip O'Neill would grab a bottle of Irish whiskey and 2 cigars, go over to the White House, and he and Ronald Reagan would sit there and watch cowboy movies in the White House movie theater, and they would work on the issues where they could find common ground and look at the prosperity that occurred under the Reagan administration, look at the fall of the Berlin Wall and the downfall of the Soviet Empire. That took leadership, and Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill figured out how to do that.
I don't see Trump and Pelosi doing that.
I can only ask them to try. I can only ask them to try. I was with the president 2 weeks ago with a group of Democrats and Republicans talking about this funding problem and border security, and I whispered to the president's chief of staff, this is a Ronald Reagan, Tip O'Neill moment. We need to find out how to get these two in the same room over a bottle of Irish whiskey. And I don't know if Nancy Pelosi smokes cigars, but maybe if he offered her one, it might help. I don't know.
Hey, finally, I think it's your turn. Do you have anything that you'd like to say to the people that are in the district here? Is there any message that you'd like to deliver to them today?
I would, Bill. I will tell you that, I am an eternal optimist. And I would tell you, my mother always told me this, believe half of what you hear, half of what you see and none of what you hear. Verify it for yourself. Don't fall victim to all the negativism that you see in the national media and over the internet. America is strong. Our economic growth is surging. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act have put money back in people's pockets. We're seeing a turnaround. Jobs are being created. I am optimistic about America's future. And here's a challenge that I will leave with all your listeners. One thing that makes America unique, every generation has the unbelievable responsibility and challenge to write the next great chapter of our journey. America is never a finished product. We are always advancing to the next level. I have great optimism that future generations are going to make good decisions just like our past generations have. It's a dangerous world out there, and America we are safer, we are more prosperous when we are stronger. And if we stick together, we can overcome anything.
Congressman Bill Johnson, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks a lot, Bill.